looking at a painting called Christ with Symbols of the Passion, which was painted around 1576 by a painter named Lavinia Fontana. And she was one of the early female painters and was quite successful. One biographer has called her a civic celebrity in her hometown of Bologna. They issued a portrait medal of her in 1611. Bologna did have a tradition of active and public female spirituality. That city was a little bit more primed to be open to a female being active in a public way. Lavinia Fontana played into this concept of female spirituality by painting primarily portraits and religious paintings. Her religious paintings followed the ideals that were set out after the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent issued a number of reforms for the Catholic Church, and one of them dealt with religious art. The Archbishop of Bologna said of religious painting that images should breathe piety, modesty, sanctity, and devotion. So her output was very much in that style. Despite that, there were obstacles to the career of a female artist. There was the problem of women being discouraged from being in the marketplace. And an artist had to make a living. The whole process of apprenticeship and workshops were male-dominated. And finally, there was a general belief that women simply were not skilled in the way that men were in painting. And Lavinia managed to overcome all of these, helped in part by her father, Prospero. Prospero Fontana was also a painter, but determined that his daughter would be equally or even more successful, which she was. She, in fact, became viewed as something extraordinary because she was female, and yet her skill level was viewed as the equal of male painters. And so she became something of a celebrity. One of the primary things that solidified Lavinia Fontana's career was her marriage, because as long as she was unmarried, it would be a little difficult for her, for example, to be painting portraits, particularly of men. But once she was married, then she was safely a respectable matron. And so her father, Prospero, wanted to get her married off. And she painted a self-portrait that her biographer, Caroline Murphy, believes was intended as a gift for her fiancé on their betrothal. She argues that if you look at the self-portrait, you can see some ways in which the portrait itself is, in a sense, propaganda for Lavinia. She's dressed very richly, which may suggest prosperity, her ability to bring money into the household. She is playing a harpsichord, so that indicates her talents go further than simply painting. She also, in the background, you can see an easel. So again, within the self-portrait is an element that directly relates to what she is doing, what her career could be, what her abilities are. Christ with Symbols of the Passion was painted before she married, and she painted most of her work after her marriage. And in these earlier paintings, she really, in particular, put a stress on evoking emotion, but also on the older form of religious paintings as teaching tools, so that people could see, okay, here are the symbols associated with Christ's passion, which was his suffering and his death. So we have the cross, the column, which he was tied to when he was beaten or flagellated. We have the whip in the foreground on the ground, circled by the crown of thorns. Over here, the angel holding the column is also holding the nails, the 4 nails that would have been in his hands and feet. And finally, Lavinia has done something rather interesting. She has put her signature, this is one of her signed pieces, on a tablet that you see to the far left foreground of the picture. The sort of emotional component of all this are the small child angels that are bearing both Christ's body and the cross and the column. And all of these, Christ's body, the cross, and the column, are all massive in comparison to these children. It emphasizes the compassion and the love of these children as they struggle to contain these objects, including Christ's body, which is very clearly a dead body. You can see that in the way that the paint depicting Christ's flesh is white, very, very white. It's drained of life. His posture is contorted, and that is typical of this period. She's still painting in the Mannerist style. There was always something a little odd about proportion, or about placement, or about color use with Mannerists. They were pushing things a little bit. They were edgy. I think for Lavinia, again, she was walking a very fine line as a female painter. And so while a male painter might get away with more shock value, as a female painter, that was a line that she probably didn't want to cross. Lavinia was also the basic provider financially for her family, so she needed to continue to get patronage. And particularly in this period in Bologna, she could do that best by giving them art that they wanted. And for the church, that meant paintings that were modest, that were devotional. The emotion had to be there, but it needed to be gentle.